Hello everyone. This video will cover Module 3. So Module 3 is the first module where we're going to be working on one of our major writing assignments. So in this case, it'll be our first essay, which is a narrative essay. So you have so far just kind of learned some invention strategies, some pre-writing, a little bit more about thesis statements. Now we're going to get into a specific type of writing or style of writing, and we'll get started planning your narrative essay. So you're not writing an essay yet. We're still in the planning stage, but you do have a couple of assignments here that are going to help you work on this essay. So the first one is our readings, which have to do with narration and description. You are writing a narration essay. So if you're in the textbook and you've accessed the patterns book, you're going to be looking at that chapter. That chapter is going to tell you what is involved in a narrative essay, as well as how to structure it, how to plan it, how to brainstorm for it, all of that. So that's going to be under our Part 2 readings for writers. We have this chapter, narration. There are a couple of sections. Obviously, you're going to read through it because you have to take a quiz over it, but the structuring tab for each of these chapters is really where the help will come for just how are you going to put this together. So this is just a sample outline of what a narration essay will look like. I'm also having you read chapter 7, description. You are not writing a description essay, but you will be using description in your narration essay. And description chapter has quite a few vocabulary terms, which will be important to remember. So things like a connotation versus a denotation of a word, things like objective versus subjective description, what figures of speech there are, that kind of thing. So there's going to be quite a few vocabulary terms in there to help you out. And then we also have 3 short readings from the book. So each book or each chapter of the book goes through, what is the style of writing? How do you plan it? How do you structure it? How do you revise it? And then there's a number of examples that they include afterwards. And so you are going to be reading a few examples for each of the styles of writing that we're going to cover. And so in this case, these come from both the narration and description chapters, and they're just examples of what you can do with that style of writing. You'll need to read those because you're going to be taking a quiz over them. So the quiz, it will be pulling questions from the textbook. All of the quizzes are roughly, well, most of them are roughly the same, and that is where you can take them more than once. There's not a time limit. It'll record the highest score, that kind of thing. And it pulls from a pool, so a pool of questions, so you'll get new questions for each attempt. This is the essay assignment. So once you've done that and you understand narration and description writing, now you can move on to just looking at the assignment itself. So this essay assignment is what's going to be due in the next module. So where you can start working on it now, you're going to do some brainstorming for it in this module, and you could start drafting if you want to, but you're not turning in the final draft until the next module. So this essay is, the challenge here is to think of an event where you had some sort of significant experience that changed you in some way. It doesn't have to be a physical change. Mostly students will work on something that's more of a mental or emotional change. So an event that shaped your life and somehow made you unique as a person. I encourage you, you can write about things like births and deaths and marriages and things like that. Those are definitely life-altering events. However, most people experience them. And so I encourage you to think kind of beyond that. I do get a significant number of stories about sporting events, winning or losing, accidents, things like that, which definitely tend to be a little bit more universal. But as long as you're picking something that is really just something that changed you, that you can really reflect on yourself with, you should be okay. So there's a lot of different incidents that you can use, but the basis for the essay is you are telling the story, and the focus, the key part of this is exploring why it was significant and how you changed from it. So what did you learn from this experience? So the narration will go through and kind of build some tension for the reader. You'll use some specific language to give us lots of description of what it was like, who the people were, where you were at. You'll have at least 2 lines of dialogue, so you want people actually talking during your story. Some students include more dialogue, and some students just have the 2 required, and it's dependent on your topic for your essay. Typically, students have at least something that they can put dialogue in there for, but if it is something that has there was no talking at all, so I've had a couple of hunting stories, for example, where you don't, if you're hunting by yourself, you're not going to be talking. So it may be an instance where you have to include a thought as in dialogue form if you need to. And then the significance of the event, which is typically an implied thesis in the conclusion rather than something in the introduction. Obviously, you're going to write in first-person point of view. Do not write this essay from the third person because you'll just confuse yourself. And it's not about the reader, which would be second person, the yous. So you want to use I throughout this essay. It needs to be at least 2 to 5 pages long, which if you have a good story, you should have plenty of space to write about it. I put the page number length in there to help you gauge if your topic's good enough. So if you can't write 2 pages about it, it's not a specific enough event, or it's not something you remember enough details about. If you're writing over 5 pages, typically it's because you have chosen an event that's too big, or something that's occurred over too long of a period of time. So we want to limit ourselves to 1 day or less. So if you can isolate a day, even if it's a longer experience like summer camp, isolate the 1 day that was most important to you. So we're trying to be more specific, narrow it down to a moment if you can. So that's what the next assignment is going to help you do. And this is, just a pre-writing journal. We've done this before, except this one only has 2 entries. The first one is a free write. Set your timer for 10 minutes and use these questions to help you brainstorm ideas. You can choose one, you can do all of them. It does not matter. It should be a continual typing. We want all of those errors in there because it's a free write. So don't stop to try and, Grammarly your way out of it. Just leave all of those errors in there. This is just to help you get some ideas down. Once you've chosen your topic, then, and I've also got some ideas here as well, then you're going to actually create an outline, or it doesn't be a listed outline. It does not need to be a formal outline of just events that happen. So when we think of a story, we have the introductory information that provides context, and then we get the start of what's going to happen, which is leading up to the climax. Now, the climax is the event itself. So it might be the day, it might be the hour, it might be the moment, but this is what we're leading up to. This is the thing that changed you. And then the following action is the result. And then we get the resolution, which is how you changed from it. So we get this pattern here, about 5 sections of your essay, and you'll want to have something specific for each one. You can also see this is kind of how you would put together an outline. This gives you a sample outline for narration as well from the textbook. So those 2 things you're going to type out and then submit to this assignment. And that way I can see what you're planning on for your essay, and I can redirect any of you who have chosen something that won't work for this assignment. So that's the module. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great week.